All right, the recording is starting, and welcome to the Real Estate Investment Club. This is a club where we hear from real estate investors around the country and learn from their expertise, getting a variety of different types of real estate investors in here. And I'm always interested in hearing the topics that you want to talk about. So if you have topics, please mention them in the chat on the side window or email them to me. I will try to line up speakers that are on the topics that you send to me. So a couple of club announcements really quickly. I know everybody probably like me are tired of being at home, and so I'm trying to come up with ways of making these meetings more interactive. And I think that hearing from a guest speaker is a great way of communicating. But I think we're also going to try a idea that was presented to us about a month ago of just a discussion luncheon. And originally it was proposed, that each campus kind of have a small lunch and people who want to get together talk. But I think we're going to try this virtually. So if you are interested in just a short half-hour luncheon together talking about real estate, we're going to run the first one next Tuesday at noon. And if you are interested, send me an email, IM me, and I will send you an invite to it. And it's just an informal discussion. There's no set agenda. You come, talk about whatever you want. It's a time for us to get to know each other a little bit better and just to talk about something that we all enjoy. Courtney, maybe you need to use a phone, Courtney. I still can't hear you. And you are unmuted in software. All right. So while Courtney is trying to figure that out, the other thing that I wanted to say is that if anybody has suggestions, okay, we can see your IMs, Courtney. If anybody has suggestions for creating more community, and especially since we're all at home and sheltering, please send them to the group. You can put them up on Yammer, or you can share them on the Inside Blue community, and we'll try and create more community here. And then the last thing that I wanted to say is that I wanted to offer a service if people want to talk with me one-on-one after business hours. I'm offering a free call to anybody who's interested. It's your agenda. I'm there to listen to you and talk with you. So if you are interested in talking about a particular topic and want to talk it over with somebody, feel free. I get to talk to a lot of real estate investors because I do a daily podcast where I interview people around the country usually every day at noon. So I have a fair amount of access to people, and if you want to sit down and just talk, I love to talk. So I'm offering that to anybody who's interested. And Courtney, hopefully we can turn it over to you in a moment. Can you call in on a phone? Is there a number to call to the intro? Yeah. And my apologies. Let me get that for you. If somebody has it handy, can you put it into the IM chat? Okay, while we're waiting, does anybody have any opens?
I don't know if you're going to bring up the topic of contracts. If you have rental property, that might be something.
Okay, great. What specifically about the contracts?
Well, personally, I have a 2-year rental agreement where I fired my rental property company
Mhm.
And when the contract comes up again, I'm going to need my own contract.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it will be nice to know where to look for something like that.
All right. Actually, what we could probably do is we could probably find some lawyers that specialize in that, or somebody from LegalZoom or another outlet like that that gives official legal documents. All right, I'll put that on the list.
I know there are boilerplates, but I live in a different state, so I've been trying to read up what the difference is from one state to the next.
Oh, what state do you live in?
I'm in Virginia.
Okay. And who was that talking?
Michelle, sorry.
Okay.
Michelle Miller, Miller.
All right. Excellent. All right. My apologies. I don't know why the sound isn't working. Um,
Did you see in the chat, Daniel, Courtney's asking for a phone number to dial in?
yeah, I need to look it up while on the call at the same time. Does somebody have the Intel dial-in number handy?
I used to remember it because I used it all the time, but I haven't for a lot of years. So I'd have to look something up too. Let's see.
Are you talking about the bridge number?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I'm going to need to find the pin as well.
There it is.
Unfortunately, meetup.intel.com doesn't generate those things, so I'm going back to see if I could find some of the older meetings that we used to hold. I've got the URL, but not a phone number associated with it.
Oh, looks like other people already.
All right, bridge number 5. Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to still need to find the meeting ID, so I'm going back. We've been using the same bridge number for several months now, and I'm looking it up in my calendar to see if I could find it.
There it is.
If you have his number, you can invite him. You can just call the number from the Skype.
Hey, Courtney, I'm going to look up your email or your phone number right now. So email it to me really quickly on my personal account. I know I've got it there probably, so I'm looking it up. Courtney Buck. My apologies, everybody, for this. We usually have our guest speakers test their accounts, and I got a notification that said that he was able to at least get into the Skype meeting. But since there was nobody on the line there with him, I guess the audio didn't get checked. Okay, I've got your phone number, Courtney, and I'm going to try and invite you to the group here. So do I just type it into the invite by name or phone number, I assume? We'll see what happens. Okay, Courtney, your phone should be ringing. Oh, somebody's got the meeting ID. Thank you. Where'd you find that?
Hey, Daniel, this is Courtney.
Courtney, welcome to the group here.
Thank you so much. I apologize about that. I tested it last night, and for some reason, it's giving me a hard time. I can hear everybody talking, but sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. So we've gone through the club announcements, and at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to you. A little bit of introduction for Courtney. He is an active real estate investor. He's been involved in different types of real estate investment. I'll let him go into that wherever he wants to go with it. But he also works at the CDC, and so has so he probably has a unique perspective. And Courtney, we're looking forward to what you have to share with us. So I'll turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, sure. How do I share my screen? Do I just hit, it looks like share screen down at the bottom?
Yeah, with Skype it should be down at the bottom, usually the third button in, share content.
Got it, okay. Okay, can everybody see my screen or no?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll start talking while I try to figure this out too. So like Daniel mentioned, I do work for the Centers for Disease Control. it was a long journey to get there. I originally went to college at the Missouri University of Science and Technology in Missouri and studied applied math and economics there. From there, I enlisted in the Army and deployed to Afghanistan and disarmed bombs for a living. So the name of my PowerPoint slide was From Bomb Disarming to Multifamily Investing, which is kind of a huge jump in just a few years. But I was disarming roadside bombs for a living, did that for 4 years, and really enjoyed it. But it was something that I was gone all the time, and there's a certain element of danger to it that after a long time of doing that, I wanted to move on. After that, I went into special operations. I met my wife in Iraq. She was working on the special operations teams too as an intelligence officer. And then we came back to Florida, got married, and I applied to work for the White House as a presidential fellow back in 2013 and was able to work at the White House and United States Agency for International Development in Washington, D.C. At about that time, 2014, there was an Ebola outbreak in Western Africa, and they wanted somebody who didn't mind traveling to places that had a certain element of danger, didn't mind living in austere environments. So they invited me down to Atlanta for a 6-month rotation to work with the Centers for Disease Control on this outbreak. And I guess I did a quality job during that time. They asked me to stay on board, and we liked the South. We liked the weather far more than the Mid-Atlantic. And we moved the whole family down here and bought a house. So between then and now, whether it's been a Zika outbreak in the Caribbean, West Nile, yellow fever, malaria outbreaks in Southern Africa, if there's been some kind of outbreak between 2014 and now, I've been involved with it. So as you can say, I've been really, really busy over the past 3 months. My office started tracking the coronavirus in early January, and I know it had been tracked a little earlier than that, but that's when I took over. So it's been all hands on deck for the Centers for Disease Control. Now the story for real estate investing is, while I was in Botswana, and while I was over there trying to, sure, Daniel, I just got your email. While I was in Botswana, I had a lot of extra time at night just because there was there's not a lot to do in a village in Botswana after work. There's not a place that you can go because literally there are lions and elephants outside the village walls. So I started listening to podcasts on investing. It's something I've always enjoyed doing. And I started finding these podcasts about real estate investing. And it's something where I had owned rental properties in the past. Every time I would go from duty station to duty station in the military or place to place, I would buy a house, and then when I would leave, I would just keep it, and then I would rent it out. So I understood some of the property management. I understood some of the depreciation that you can get from the real estate investing, which I really liked. They weren't cash flowing as much as I wanted to, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing. I also heard there was another way to make money in real estate investing, and that was wholesaling and flipping. As many of you probably seen, you've seen the HGTV shows with the Chip and Joanna Gaines, who were flipping homes for fun. And my wife and I just looked at each other and we're like, we can do that. That would be so easy to do. So I found a house from an estate sale and bought it. I had it under contract, and then I was sent back to Africa for another few months, and I didn't know what to do with this house. But another flipper approached me and said, hey, I'll buy the contract from you. And I didn't know what that meant, and I found out that was called wholesaling, when you put a house under contract and then flip it to another investor, the paper you flip. And I made nearly as much on that deal as like 4 months of wages at my W-2 job working for the government. And I was thrilled and mad at the same time. I was thrilled because I had made a great amount of money for me. Mad because it didn't take that much work to do it. I worked so hard in the military and with the Centers for Disease Control that it seemed like I was scamming the system by building a business doing this. So I escalated the business from there, started flipping my own houses during that time. And it got to a point where I built out my crew enough and the systems out enough to where I was working about 3 hours a week on the business, and it had basically tripled my income from my W-2 job. That's great. That's really great. But after the first 12 calendar months of doing it, or the first full year of doing it, I received the first tax bill from the government, and I really got punched in the face by Uncle Sam because it was nearly a $100,000 tax bill. And I was upset by this. I felt like the harder I had worked, the more I was getting kind of punished with taxes. So I knew there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way to make money in real estate. There had to be a way to not pay nearly as much taxes on it. Thanks, Daniel. So everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
So I knew there had to be a better way. So it kept on coming back to, so I'll go through the slides real quick. That's me in Africa. That's me while I was deployed. And this is some of the other things I did between being in the Army and here. You can go down one more slide. So I was asking, how do I reduce my taxes? And I was also using private money for my flips. So at the time, I had nearly $2 million of private money that I was using to fund my flips, but I never needed all that money at the same time. So what do I do with all this money that I want to utilize because it's there for me, but I also don't want to pay a lot in taxes? And that kept going back to multifamily. So I started looking for a mentor. I started looking to learn more. So I started listening to podcasts, reading books, talking to other investors in that space. You quickly realize this is a really small community, and then either you know somebody who knows how to do it or you partner with them and you learn from them, and that's what I did. So during that time, it was 2019, I switched the business completely over to multifamily investing because my big why at that point was I didn't want to pay a lot in taxes. I wanted to have steady income. I still work at the CDC, but I wanted more income. Where flipping is very up and down, it's very cyclical. I might have 3 houses to flip one month. I might have 0 or 1 the next month, so I never could count on an income per month. I just had to average it out throughout the year. And I also wanted to be home a lot more. At that time, especially in the Army, and of course in the CDC, I had to do these responses. I was gone at least 4 months a year, oftentimes 6 months a year away from home. And we have 4 kids now. We had 3 up until February. We just had our 4th baby. I wanted to be able to be in a position where I didn't have to travel as much. That was really my ultimate goal, to have the money was great, but the complete control of my time was even more important. So that was my big why, and this was my better plan to do it. So I threw myself head first. You can see here, IDEAL, it's just an acronym that I've heard and I've stolen from other people. This is why multifamily is so powerful for me. It has that steady quarterly income. You can use the depreciation, which is just insane compared to single family homes. With depreciation, we had a Montgomery deal that's already closed, but if someone had invested $100,000 into that deal last year, they got a $77,000 tax benefit just for 2019. I can't even fathom that on the single family side. So I'm all in on multifamily. I'm an equity holder in the properties that I have. Hopefully, we don't know what's going to happen with appreciation of properties over the next couple of years with coronavirus and the economy being the way it is. CDC, we are forecasting a second surge of the coronavirus in fall. So we'll see what happens over the next year with that. And leverage, that's just using other people's money. I've always done that with my investing. unless I have a good steady cash position, I use other people's money to purchase these properties and leverage their ability to either raise it or find the deals. So I started in 2019, got my first property in November, my second property in February, and we'll see what happens with the income, just because we'll see how renters are able to pay their bills throughout the summer. And I think by June and July, we'll be able to see how the economy is treating people and their ability to pay their rent. But between now and then, I'm actually looking for more property. I think there's going to be a lot of deals coming up. I think just because of the way the economy works and the way coronavirus is working, if someone has the financial position to hold on to a large multifamily project, they're going to ride this wave out. It might be a year-long wave or more. But if there's a distressed seller that needs to sell, I think people who are in the multifamily space right now will be able to leverage their position in negotiating position and get better deals, which will help in the appreciation down the road. Daniel, if you can go down one more slide.
Sure. I don't know if you're just seeing my presentation or if you're seeing everything on my desktop.
No, I'm just seeing the presentation.
Just the presentation.
Okay. That's fine. So that's kind of my story in 15 minutes. That's me outside the White House. That's part of the West Wing. If you look over my right shoulder, that's where they give the daily briefings, if you've been watching that at the White House. That's my contact information. If you want to take a picture of the QR codes, if you have any further questions after we discuss today or meet today, by all means. I have a long, interesting story in the last 15 years, and I'm learning every day. So I don't know everything, but if people want to know more about my journey and the mistakes I've made especially and how not to do those, just let me know. Well, Daniel, that's all I have. If anybody has any questions.
Hey, Courtney, I know that just because I tend to do multifamily, we've had a number of discussions on that, and so I was hoping we could go back and focus a little bit more on wholesaling and explain what that is. And it depends if people want to go that way or if they want to go a different way. Just speak up and let us know. But can you explain what that is in a little more detail and just how that works?
Yeah. I can go step by step through that actually, and this really only takes into consideration the single family home side. So a single family regular house. So when you wholesale it, think of like when you buy soap at the store or a car, that person you're buying it from bought it at a wholesale price, added a certain amount to it so they can make a profit, and then sold it to you, the end buyer. The same thing can happen with houses. It can be used with land. So what I'll do is I will, either through direct mail or Facebook marketing or other routes of marketing, I will purposely look for people who are in a distressed situation or where their house is a stress or a burden to them. And you would think, why is a house a burden to somebody who owns it? For instance, let's say a young married couple inherits a house from their family who has passed away or their father who's passed away. They don't want the house, but they need the cash that the house is worth in 30 days for whatever reason to be able to pay their bills or send their kids to a good school, or the reasons are endless. They want to sell fast, they don't care about the house, and they need somebody in a cash position that can buy it from them off within a week. That's called wholesaling. They'll contact me. They're a lead at that point. I'll talk to them, see what their circumstances are and what their goals are with that house. And if they want to sell quickly, I'll go in and say, okay, the house, if it's not in great shape, it's going to need a lot of rehab, so I have to factor that in. So if the house is worth $200,000, if everything in the house was perfect and it can be put out on the MLS or on the market, it'll be worth $200,000. I subtract out profit, I subtract out labor, I subtract out the amount of work it needs, as far as if it doesn't need a new kitchen, does it need a new bath, does it need all new landscaping. I subtract all this out, and I'll go in with an offer, usually about 50% of what it's actually worth if everything was perfect on the property. So, Daniel, if you go up, I think 3 slides, you'll see a before and after picture of a house that we wholesaled to another flipper, and they flipped it. That's the same house. That house on the lower right-hand side was uninhabitable inside. It reeked of smoke. It was a hoarder house, so people had been hoarding trash inside it, literally bags of trash, and they couldn't give this house away when the couple inherited it. This was actually an inherited house. So they approached me and said, we don't care about this house. Get it off of our hands as fast as possible. So it was worth about $170,000, all fixed up. This is Georgia, so we're a little cheaper here. $170,000. I was able to buy it for $50 some odd thousand, but I had to sink another $70,000 to bring it up to a state to live in. So back to wholesaling. I'll put that house under contract for whatever I can negotiate. I'll take that contract, and I have a network of hundreds of flippers here in the Atlanta area, and I'll say I have a contract for a house. Who's interested in this house? And I'll set up basically like a day to walk these guys through it, or my staff will. They'll walk the rehabbers through this house, and I'll say in 24 hours you have to give me a soft bid or a soft offer on it, and I'll pick the best and highest value. Sometimes the highest offer on the contract is not the best, especially if I haven't worked with them before. So I'll pick that and I'll sell them the contract. So we'll go to the closing table. I'll sit with the sellers, and then I'll sit with the flipper. The sellers walk away with cash in hand. I pay all the closing. The flipper gets a great house to flip, and he'll make profit too. So I'll add my profit. The flipper will make his profit. The seller gets rid of a house that's burdensome to them. So that's a long story for wholesaling.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions that are in the chat room. Asif is asking, can you explain depreciation? $100,000 investment yielded $77,000 and ... in layman's terms.
Yeah. So depreciation is, if you've ever owned a rental house, they have what's called straight line depreciation. So that means it's based on 27 and a half years. You take the value of the house, you divide it by 27 and a half, and you can depreciate or take away that number from the amount that's taxable in your taxes you pay that year. With single family homes, it's basically the same every year. With commercial real estate, especially with multifamily real estate, you're allowed to take most of that 27 and a half years up front, so it's accelerated. So that's why you're able to take up such a big chunk of tax savings in those first really 3 years, but you can see most of it 5 years. So that's why a lot of people who invest in multifamily, they really only want to invest in it for about 5 years, because that's when most of the tax savings is taken. But these are new tax laws that came in, I think, in 2017. Is that right, Daniel?
2017, the Tax Acts and Jobs Act.
Yeah, so it's very favorable to investors and multifamily investors. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yep.
Since you work at the CDC, I'm sure that everybody has questions about that. And I think we're all aware that as a government employee, that what you can say is definitely restricted. What can you tell us about your outlook for the next several months or next several years for real estate, and how your unique perspective puts light on it?
Yeah, and you're right. I have to. This is a closed environment, so I'm a little more liberal with what I can say. But anything I do say about whether it's coronavirus or policy or the government, it's just my opinion. It's not the opinion of the CDC or the U.S. government. But we're going through really hard times right now. As of yesterday, 30 million people over the last 6 weeks have applied for unemployment insurance. So there is going to be a downturn in the market. There will be This will last a while. I know states are slowly opening up, but there's going to be a lot of people that will lose their jobs long term. We're seeing it in the energy sector right now. My friends that are out in West Texas and Oklahoma, they're going to be out of jobs for a long time. That has negative and positive effects. The negative is you have a person that doesn't have income anymore, so they may not be able to put food on the table. They can't take care of their family. On the flip side of that, businesses exist to solve problems. They have a problem, we can fix it. If those people who are in a distressed situation, which there's going to be a lot of people like that over the next 9 months, especially throughout the end of the year, basically, their house might go into foreclosure because they can't pay the rent. They might inherit a house from a family member or sell a rental house because they need the cash for something else. At this point in the market, there's going to be a glut of those homes like there was in 2008, 2009, and 2010. Maybe not as many, but there will be some more than there was even in February. Those are advantages to people who do single-family home investing. So if you're looking to pick up property for buy and hold, property to flip, property to wholesale, those homes will need to be sold quickly, and quick means cheaper. If you're trying to provide a product but you need to get it out the door quicker, it's going to be a cheaper product or less valuable. So it's the same thing for single-family homes. The more people they're in a distressed situation that need to sell, the more leverage we have as investors to buy those homes cheaper than they were in February when we were really at a high peak in the market. It may take a while for that market to swing that way, but we'll see it by the end of summer.
And I'm going to skip
Did I
down.
answer all the question, Daniel?
Well, there's actually quite a few, and people are putting great topics in here. Although they're a little,
sure.
I'm going to try and arrange them in a way that flows a little more naturally for the conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump all the way down to the bottom question, which is: does a home bought with cash qualify for depreciation tax benefits?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does. If you're going to file taxes and you own a rental property, this is for rental property, not for your own personal property. That's the big distinction. If this is an investment property, even if you buy with cash, you'll still get a depreciation benefit from it. Yeah.
Now, one of the benefits that you won't get, though, is the mortgage interest deduction. So mortgage interest,
will not get that.
If you buy with cash, you won't get that. All right.
That's right.
Jumping up a little bit here, I'm going to summarize this question from Mohammed. He's interested in your opinion on buying. He's got some cash to invest. He's thinking about buying several single-family homes or a multi-unit, and wants to know your opinion on the difference.
Yeah, it depends what size the multi-unit is. If you invest in a multi-family unit that doesn't have on-site leasing or on-site maintenance, your expense is going to be higher. So your smaller multi-family properties, let's say like quads or sixes or eights or tens, you have to farm out the leasing. You have to hire somebody else to do the maintenance. It's the same thing as with single-family homes. The expenses are going to be higher on both. If you invest in a larger multifamily, those expenses drop dramatically just because the economies of scale work better on larger multifamily.
Okay, and then another question from him. He wants to know your opinion of flipping the home versus just buying it and renovating it and keeping it.
It depends where you're at financially. Whenever I was starting to flip, I just wanted the money as soon as I could. But after that first year, I saw how the tax system worked for active income. When you have active income and a lot of it, you're going to be taxed heavily. So once I had that established and I was making good money on the flipping side, and I wanted that depreciation, I moved into the buy and hold. But at that point, it was buy and hold with multifamily by investing in it. I still had my single family homes that gave me a little depreciation, but like nothing like multifamily. Multifamily is like the tax benefit between single family homes and multifamily is the difference between like a Jetta and like a Mercedes Benz. It's so much different, and so to me a lot better. You just save so much more in taxes.
All right. There is a question about I'm going to jump down to open an LLC to collect rent from a rental property. Is it a good idea to have an LLC to hold your rental property?
That is an option. I would talk to your attorney about that, but my first 3 single-family homes were under my own name, and I had what's called an umbrella insurance and policy. So there's that legal line between me and the properties. With an LLC, it's limited liability. So the 3 homes I bought after that, I put under an LLC for each house. That way there's that legal line. It's basically a legal wall between you and the property. So if something does happen bad to the investor, or I don't know, a tornado comes through and does something horrible, your liability is limited on what happens to you. So they can't come after your personal possessions or your personal property or your personal wealth. If I own a home and I don't have insurance on it, an umbrella insurance, and it's under my own name, I am highly liable for that property. But check with an attorney, a real estate attorney, before you move further with that. But I've done both.
All right, and Bunty is also asking. He's putting topics in that are rather large, and so I'm not exactly sure how to focus these. But he's mentioned 1031 exchange and due diligence, and then we just got one more question: can you have a house under LLC if you have a mortgage on it? I understand you cannot do this without bank approval. And
yeah, because if you have a mortgage, you've gotten that mortgage underneath. If you have it with your own name, you can't just give it to your LLC you own. So if I go out and Courtney Buck gets a mortgage on a house, I own the house now with my mortgage that's attached to my name and my credit, and then I go to the Department of State of Georgia and open up 123 Main Street LLC for that house. I can't just give it to the LLC. There is a process. I've never done it, but it can be lengthy. It is an option, but from what I know, it can be a pain in the rear.
And I know we've had a lot of questions about LLCs in the past, and I am on the hook to get a specialist in that can talk about the benefits of LLCs. So that will be coming up. I just wanted to add one thing here. One of the other things you have to keep in mind too is that whether or not your house is in an LLC, the bank is usually going to require you to have personal guarantees on the loans that they provide to it if it's a residential property. And so banks tend to, due to the way that the reimbursements work with the government, usually you can only have a limit of 10 residential mortgages in your own name, and then 10 also in your spouse's name. So if you are trying to scale with single-family homes, and even with other types of properties, smaller multifamily as well, if it's a personal loan, larger banks will limit it to 10. And then you can do other things like go through credit unions or deal with hard money loans. Yeah. But there is that limited aspect to the loans as well that is there whether it's in an LLC or not.
Yep, I've heard the same thing.
I guess go ahead and explain. Let's open it up to the crowd here, actually, before we go off on other topics. If people want to pick your brain, go ahead.
Okay, guys,
yeah,
I have a question.
Ask me anything.
Okay, I have a question. Again, I think I typed it. Maybe I was not able to format it properly. One of the things you guys were saying, let's say if I buy a property as an investment property and I rent it out so that I get a positive cash flow. How you guys, again, I can keep the same money in S&P 500 and earn 7%. Do you guys do a due diligence saying that, okay, the cash flow which I'm getting, is it worth it for me to keep the property? Because if I invest the same thing in S&P 500, maybe I get a 7%. So how you guys do that kind of due diligence?
The due diligence on how long I want to keep it or where I want to put the money for the investment.
Or are you going to invest in the property or not? Is it a good deal or not?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the first steps I do, it's an old trick, but it's a good place to start, is the 1% rule. If I own a $200,000 property, like I said, I'm in Georgia, so everything's cheap here. If I can't rent that out for $2,000 a month or more, I'm probably not going to make any money or cash flow from it. Also look at your property taxes. I look at HOAs. Some HOAs are viciously expensive, especially if you're near the coast. Is it on a private street? If you're on a private street, I owned one on a private street, and whenever it came to repaving, they had a special assessment for everyone that lived on or owned a property on that street. So those are all things you have to take in. What are the gaps between renters? Is there a property management company that can get somebody out, clean, paint, maybe put down carpet, and get another person in a week or 2 weeks? That's the best case scenario. The worst case is it sits empty for 3 months and it kills your cash flow. And then look at the major systems. Look at the plumbing, look at the AC unit for sure, air conditioning, and look at the roof. A roof is 10 grand immediately here in Georgia. A basic AC system's 5,500 in Georgia. And if those have to be replaced, that can kill your cash flow for 3 or 4 years. So those are some of the big things I look at for due diligence.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
If I have one more question follow-up, if nobody has any question. So the other question which I have is, when you're saying you're flipping the houses, how your 1031 exchange comes into picture? Is it worth it to do 1031 exchange when you're flipping the houses?
No, it's not at all. A 1031 exchange can take a long time. And the trick with a 1031 exchange is you have to identify an asset you want to move on during that process. And I've never done a 1031 exchange, but I know people who have, and it can be a multi-month process. I only use private money for flips. So I go to my friend, I go to another investor and say, hey, I need to borrow $150,000. I'll pay you 8% annualized. I'll probably pay you back in 4 months. I'll put it in a contract, a one-page contract, and I'll pay him back. But private money is the way to go with flips. It's the best way, and it's your cheapest money.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So I think the recommendation is not to go with 1031. That's your recommendation, basically.
Yeah, I don't do it.
Okay, thank you.
It's too slow.
We've got a question related to COVID. It says, with elections this fall and the possibility of a second wave of COVID, what is your prospective outlook for 2021 with the new government? Or maybe we can just short that to 2021.
Yeah, let's just say, who knows who's going to win? So let's take out that factor. We don't know who's going to win. It's going to be one of two people. The reality is we're predicting a second wave. With that, we have a heads up that there's going to be a second wave. But that's based on, I'm sure a lot of you are engineers or great with math. That's a predictive model assessment based on activities and actions that human beings, us, the populace, are taking today or yesterday. Everything we're doing, it's going to be another wave right around flu season. So flu season starts, I think, late October. So that's kind of prime time for the election to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with the government, but if we're not prepared, we're going to have to close down schools again, churches again. Mosques, synagogues will have to close down, restaurants will shut down again. Nobody wants this to happen. Everybody wants to go back to a normal way of life. But unless we take it seriously, more seriously than we did, this is my opinion again, more seriously than we did in January, we're going to pay the price again. And we just can't afford that as a country. So my hope is we've learned some lessons, and we're still learning them. So when things slow down, and they will, the virus will slow down in the summertime. All of our models show that when it comes back up in probably around October, that we'll be in a better position to combat it. But we have to utilize that time between now and then to put in the right systems and the right people to combat that. That's all.
All right. Mohammed is asking, as a real estate investor, do you use a CPA for your tax return, or do you use TurboTax Home and Business?
So I use two key people. I don't use TurboTax at home, but we'll start even earlier than that. So I use a bookkeeper, which if anybody is a real estate investor, whether you have one house or 50, get a bookkeeper. You will sleep so much better at night just knowing where that money is at. it's categorized correctly, a bookkeeper will save you. From there, that bookkeeper just gives it off to my H&R Block person. If it's segregated right in the bookkeeping, a CPA at H&R Block can do that. I don't go down to Buckhead, which is the main financial district in Atlanta, and pay someone $2,000 to do my taxes. I do it for $500 at a regular H&R Block. But that bookkeeper's key, for sure.
All right. Marcus is asking, with a lot of uncertainty in the market and banks raising their lending requirements, would you still recommend using hard money loans?
Marcus, for flips or for like short-term rentals? Could you clarify?
Well, what about for both? I would like to hear your input on both.
Yeah.
Flipping and rentals.
Yes. For flips, I would say if you're using hard money, I love hard money. Usually it costs a couple points, which is if you borrow $100,000 and they want 2 points up front plus 8%, you're paying $2,000 right off the top. But they're more competitive now, so a lot of them don't need that. So I would try to find hard money that doesn't need points up front. And if you do work with a hard money lender, make sure they cannot call the loan. If a hard money lender in their fine print or documentation can call the loan at any point, any day, they can say, Marcus, you know that $100,000 I loaned you, we're calling it. And you have to provide that $100,000 back in whatever time period they put in the contract. So if you use it and things become very uncertain in the markets, especially debt markets, which haven't settled down yet, make sure there's no call requirement. And that when you sign that contract, you give yourself 6 months for a flip with no prepayment penalty. Make sure that's in there. There were some hard money lenders coming out this winter that were going to start lending out to people who wanted to buy and holds, to buy a house and then hold it for 5 or 10 years. I don't know where they stand anymore. I'm not sure if they're lending like that, but I'm going to look into that after this call because I haven't looked into it. But the same thing, make sure they can't call the loan. If you've ever heard of a guy named Dave Ramsey, he has a story where he made lots of money early in his career, but he was taking money from the bank that had a call date on it. They called him on his money. So he was sitting on all this property, and all of a sudden the banks wanted their money back, and they called their accounts, and he couldn't provide it. He went bankrupt. So learn from him. Make sure you can protect yourself on anything you sign with a hard money lender.
Got it. And now, when it comes to rental properties, what do you recommend? What kind of loans would you recommend?
Yeah, if it's your first couple of houses, just get a regular mortgage on it. Try to put 20% down. And if you're good with numbers, see if you're talking with the seller, directly with the seller, not a real estate agent. See if you can get owner financing. And there's several books out there on owner financing where you don't have to use any of your own money. You basically, let's say, Marcus, you're selling a house. You want to sell it for $100,000 and I want to buy it. I'll say, Marcus, I love your house. I don't want to go borrow money from a bank. I'd rather borrow it from you for 8% over the next 10 years. Does that sound great? We'll turn it into like a mini retirement account. You like the idea, we'll draw up the paperwork into a contract stating I'm going to make you payments over 10 years at 8%, and we'll close at the closing table using that document. But you have to be savvy with numbers quickly to do that.
Got it.
Yep.
Hey, Courtney, question. So you mentioned that you follow 1% rule, and for Georgia it works like 200,000 house and 2,000 looks like that's a good return. But for California, like everything is, I mean, if decent amount is 500K, but you don't get 5,000 in return. So what is your take of investment here in California? Let's say the average price is 500K.
Yeah, if you're looking for rental properties in California, and some of the people I learned from live in San Diego, so they're the same way. A small home costs $800,000, and you can't get an $8,000 rent. The first thing I would do would be to contact wholesalers, people like what I was doing, people who were going out and buying discounted property from distressed sellers. Get on their email list, so when they send out deals, you can buy homes for less than what they're worth on the open market. I would do that, but sometimes you just can't some places like that in Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, renting a home is hard unless you bought it in 2008 when things were much cheaper. But there are other ways to invest. You can invest in syndications. You can invest passively that way, or lend money to flippers. That's another way to do it as well.
So yeah, so two things I learned, that wholesaling thing and lend money to flippers, but I don't have any source. So can you also share, like, how can we find information on those?
Yeah, I can. I don't know any personally, but I can find some. And if I don't know, Daniel, if I don't know how you can connect our information, you can email me. You have my email address. If you want to email me, I can send you out some sources to look for.
Sounds
and
good.
vetting questions, so you can vet them to make sure they're legit.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Is Courtney's information still showing on the share?
I don't see it.
It's blank.
Oh, it's not. Okay, that's all right. Let me reshare then.
Oh, it was for a moment, for like a fraction of a second. I know way.
So Anthony shared Bigger Pockets, so I don't know what that is. So is that something what Courtney is referring to?
Bigger Pockets is a good place to learn. It's an online forum for real estate investors and some real estate agents. It's a good place to learn, like your kind of like entry level. I don't say entry level, but it's a networking tool you can learn a lot from for free. Just vet your people before you listen to someone. Make sure they're actively doing deals and they know what they're talking about.
Hey, Courtney, Dennis has a question, and so his question is, why do owner financing for 8% versus a mortgage for 3%?
Yep, Dennis, it's a good question. So let's say you do own 10 properties. Let's say you already hit that limit of 10 mortgages with a bank. Now you can't get any more mortgages unless your wife has a killer job. So you're cut off from the banking process and the savings and loan people or community banks. At that point, if you want to keep buying homes, owner financing is about the only way to do it. So if you can negotiate with a seller that you can pay them 8%, they can get 2 or 3% down at the bank using other ways to invest their money. So you have to give them some incentive to listen to you and to sign a contract with someone they barely know. So they want to get their piece too. Another reason to owner finance is, let's say you're an independent contractor or you're a programmer you are your own business and you contract yourself out. Getting a mortgage is hard if you own your own business and that's your only income. If you own your own business and you already own your personal house, getting a second mortgage for a rental property I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just very, very difficult. So owner financing gives you leverage to where the bank can't help anymore. So those are two examples. Yeah. I'm a big advocate of owner financing, but you just have to be quick with your 10-key calculator on making those calculations when you're talking to the person.
Do you have like a link, maybe showing you some of your calculations or anything, or something of that nature? Do you have like an example of that?
Yeah, if you can email me, I can send you a link to a book that I adore. I can't remember the name of it, but it teaches you how to use a 10-key calculator, a specific investing calculator actually, on how to quickly punch up future value using the interest, current value, and all that. It has a lot of the different examples, but it's super helpful.
Okay,
so
sounds good.
If you want to email me or just find me on any one of the social media links.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
All right, we've got about 5 more minutes. Any last questions for Courtney? And if not, I want to invite you all to Tuesday at lunch. We're going to take a half hour and just have a discussion group online. And even if you can't make it on Tuesday, let me know, and we'll see maybe if there's another time that could work. But I want to keep it to a minimum and during the lunch hours.
Good. Thanks, Courtney.
Daniel, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. That was really good.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you,
If
guys.
you guys have further questions, hit me up. I'll be happy to help.
All right. Thank you very much, Courtney. It was really a pleasure hearing from you.
All right.
Cheers.
You bet. Have a good one.
All right. Bye.